push-ups. I've been doing sit-ups. I've been doing chin-ups. I've been doing pull-ups. I threw up once, but I'm okay now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a Thursday edition of the Ysn Power Hour. And boy, do we have a show for you. One of the living legends of the area joins us today to talk about past, present, future, some of the things that we have in store here at Ysn, some of the things that he has in store just in his everyday life. If you know this guy, and I promise you a lot of you do, you're going to understand my next sentence. This guy is the busiest man in all of the world. I mean, my cat is from 4 a.m. till almost probably 1 at night when you finally fall asleep. I don't know where you find sleep.
Well, sometimes you got to sleep fast, DJ. Sleep fast.
We are joined by Rick Shepas here on the Ysn Power Hour. Shep, thanks for joining us, and it's been a long time coming, man. You've been around Ysn now for a couple of years, and really giving us some insight from the college ranks on down, from just your personal. This is what you're seeing. Take us through. Let's go where it started. Where did you first fall in love with sports?
I'll tell you what, sports have always been sanctuary for me, DJ. I fell in love with sports as a young kid growing up in Struthers, in the Nebo Park area, Struthers, where, we were fortunate. The mills were still running hot when I was growing up in the 70s. There was a lot of sports figures in the area to look up to. In the local area, there were great players, there were great coaches, and that had a great influence and impact on my life. A lot of boys, obviously, with the mills running, and everybody making a good living in the area. So we're kind of all in a big melting pot there, gathering at our local parks. You're probably too young to remember the park system in the Youngstown and surrounding areas, but they were equipped with park ladies in the summer for arts and crafts, and they'd have, sports equipment. So, if you got to the park early, you could check out some sports equipment, play basketball right there, on the playground, or, get baseball equipment to go out on the fields and just play sandlot ball, from whether it be touch or tackle football to basketball was the great playground sport of our area, and just enjoy. And then I had my hoop at in my driveway. So, anytime I had to work some things out, I had my basketball hoop. Just, you could shoot it and compete against yourself.
So your guidance counselor with sports.
Absolutely. Learned at a young age, was always a hands-on guy. I had great teachers in elementary school and high school, and great coaches as well, but that's where I blew off my steam, and it worked out well for me. And, it ended up being good for me, for the majority of my career here.
So, and you talk about your career. I mean, your career has been based around loosely sports, naturally, as a coach and administrator. And you've got some of the great roles that you've had because of your leadership ability. Let's talk about, your playing career. When you talk about growing up in Struthers, putting the pads on, doing some of the stuff that you did. What sports did you play officially for high school?
Officially, and you remember the sports opportunities were much less,
sure.
Back in the 70s. So you had baseball.
Yep.
Obviously, everybody had rec baseball in their local areas. With their all-star teams in the summers, and we had football. There still wasn't soccer yet, but I played baseball and football growing up. Was fortunate to do that as a Catholic school kid all the way through. Mom wanted me in religion class,
What
so
mom doesn't?
Yeah, right. So I grew up in the Catholic school system at St. Nick's, and then ended up at Cardinal Mooney High School.
Mm-hmm.
Great teachers. I was an altar server there. I ended up a lector and, involved. And, my mom gave me a good foundation. growing up in the church and always raised me with the right cliches, but it worked out good to be around great coaches and I was motivated. My brother was a scholarship athlete, much older than me. My brother Bobby's 71 now. My sister Karen is 70. So they kind of set the tone, for me. I was raised as the baby, in the family, but because of the distance in age, I was a benefit, to them growing up ahead of me and setting the mark and the tone. And, Bobby with, his, doing such a great job in high school himself. And then, college scholarship guy, got his master's. I mean, back then, he was one of the first in the family to go to college, not only get a degree, but, a year later get his master's degree. So he kind of set the bar there. My sister Karen, I spent a great deal of time, with her family, growing up and, when she got married, her young family, and just provided the right atmosphere for me.
I've always been interested because you're the kind of guy that always says, you talked about the bar being set. That's the average. You want to go and exceed that. And you have. I mean, no offense to your brother, but you've had a really, really successful sports career, playing and now from a leadership standpoint. Where did you learn that from him? Where did you pick that up at? Well,
my dad was a pretty good athlete himself.
Sure.
Growing up in Camel playing for Johnny Napick. So
okay.
I think when you think about the influences that our family has had, and the different attitudes that we grew up with, we were taught to stand for something.
Mm-hmm.
My dad played for Johnny Napick. He's arguably one of the greatest, coaches of his era. Right. He had some opportunities there as well. Past that, on to my brother. My brother played for great coaches at Cardinal Mooney. I would then become a legacy to that experience at Cardinal Mooney. So, as my dad would always tell me, Bobby was a pretty good athlete.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was more of the overachieving guy.
Yeah.
So I think, when you look at my, tenure in sports, whether it be as a player and a coach, it's based off of the love for sport. It's based off of what sports can do for you, how sports can guide you through and, in your growth and maturity process. Now that I'm 56 and I could look back on it
Sure.
now, my perspective on what sports does for you in complement to what takes place in the schools is what has led me, on the path that I've been on, the last 32 plus years.
So when you look at, the leadership, you have been well renowned as one of the area's best leaders. When people need information, when they want something of, hey, Shep, personally, I do it all the time. Shep, what do you think about this? Not necessarily just sports, but life. Where did you learn that leadership quality? Where did that really start coming down? And who do you base your leadership off of?
A lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody's a benefit. If you're trying to develop leadership skills, there's a lot of people out there trying to do it, and I think you benefit by some of the great decisions that get made.
Mm-hmm.
You also benefit by some of the decisions that didn't go so well.
That's it.
And I think, being a person that studies and evaluates and analyzes, I would say that one of the qualities that I have is observation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm carefully evaluating the situation. And I'm looking at it probably in a little bit of a different perspective. I am looking at what I can gain out of every relationship that I have and how I could benefit, by learning from everybody that I come in contact with, including yourself with this great initiative that you have with YSN and the beautiful foundation that you have as far as giving back to the young people of this area by providing exposure opportunities to them. I thought it was great, that you established, this platform for young people, because quite honestly, it's necessary. They can benefit by it,
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really positive in their lives. So for me, I was always an initiative taker. I was that guy that would get home from school, get on the phone and find out, who was available to play what game in the neighborhood. Let's meet here. We're doing this. And I think that's where some of my leadership qualities come from. And I think it's centered around, my personal enjoyment. Selfishly, right, I wanted to play. So if I didn't feel like being on the basketball court in my driveway, then obviously it takes multiples to have fun and get that out there and play team sports. So I had no problem organizing those things from the time I was very young. So I think that's where I don't lack initiative skills, I guess you could say.
No, not by any stretch of the imagination. I think that's what's funny, because I can imagine you. I know how you are now. I mean, you are constantly, and if you ever see Shep, he's probably looks a lot like this. So when your statue gets built, there's going to be a phone attached to your ear. When I'm interested, because I can only imagine those calls as how old? When were you establishing these games in the backyard? 10?
I mean, yeah. I mean, before 10.
My God.
Yeah, I mean, 6, 7, 8 years old in the neighborhood. I was lucky, we had a lot of boys in our neighborhood, and each set of boys was into different things. Some were in, we grew up in a neat topography in our neighborhood where we had a hollow with a raging creek. We noticed that on with the flooding that's going on here with the snow melt right now, right? So, there's times where you wanted to be in the woods and you wanted to be doing little boy things in the woods, rafting the creek and, playing down in the hollow, throwing rocks, skipping rocks, doing all that thing. There's times where you wanted to, get involved in some sports, and, one group was into baseball, another group was into playing some football. So you had choices and you could pick and choose. And then if all else failed, the park was less than, half a mile down the road, so there's arts and crafts, so there's the swings, or
my goodness,
whatever you're doing. So it just made for a great environment.
I can just imagine you on the horn with Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith, this is little Shep. Is little Johnny around? We got a baseball game. We're trying to get together. I mean, just you're an influencer, and it doesn't matter the age. Especially now. I mean, you say at 56, I mean, you have such an influence that when you're one of those few guys that when you walk into the room, I call it the Trestle Effect. When you walk into a room, people sit back because you take over. You take over that room because there's an aura about you that people realize, okay, that's Rick Shepas. And even if they don't know who you are, people are gravitating towards you the second you walk into a door. So that's why I'm so excited to sit down with you and pick your brain, because what is that like? And when did that start? Because you've obviously played at the high school level, coached at the high school level, you've coached at the college level, and then you've been all around from an administrative standpoint. When did you start noticing people paying attention to you when you start walking into rooms and when you start calling people?
I guess I probably noticed it in high school.
Okay.
I could tell in high school, pick up on different cues. I hope when I walk into the room, that I have a presence. I hope that it's a positive presence.
Yes.
I think that you could take it one way or the other. Mm-hmm. I'm very simple-minded in my processes, and never been very, very needy. I walk in and usually if I'm walking into a place that I believe in, obviously that's a reason for being there.
Sure.
There's belief and purpose behind it. But really in high school. And then I think the first thing was, when you noticed that, I played in the North-South All-Star game, mm-hmm. When it was a big event. It was the biggest All-Star game in the state. You had 66 of the best players, 33 on each side for the North and the South playing. We went to Massillon for 2 weeks to prepare for the game, and, went out and played well, in that particular game. And then, when I walked off the field, people were looking for, hey, can I get your chin strap? Can I get your, can I get your ear pads out of your helmet? Can I get a wristband? Can I get your towel? Can I get whatever?
That's unbelievable.
Can I get an autograph?
Like LeBron.
You? I wouldn't say it at all like that. Not at all like that. Because you just had a few of the young people, coming up and asking for those things just because they may identify with you at that particular position.
Sure.
Maybe it's something a position that they wanted to play.
Yeah.
So, it wouldn't be at all to that magnitude, but at least for me, it was the first time that I recognized that, hey, I better walk a tighter line here with the type of example, that I'm putting out there. If anybody,
easily visible, right?
Yeah. And you're uncomfortable with that, with those types of things. I mean, I've never looked at myself. I'm not an autograph seeker.
Yeah.
We had a saying in our house. My dad used to say, hey, look, you're either trying to be on the card. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Don't be collecting the card.
Yep.
So I wasn't interested in wearing another jersey with another number with somebody else's name.
Wow.
On my back. That was just never part of the deal. And, you tried with everything you had to be the card. If that didn't work out, it just didn't, it wasn't in God's plans to be, but that's your attitude towards it. So I think, just reflecting and understanding, the magnitude of that, and, and being able to understand it or recognize it, I think has been a part of, my behavior as well. Recognizing teachable moments that take place, whether they're happening in your own life or happening in other people's lives.
Let me tell you what, today's the first day that I'm sincerely happy that I didn't wear a jersey, because that just inspired me. Usually you can find me with somebody else's number and name on my back. But okay, so you graduate from Carter Mooney, you go play in the North-South game. Then what? What happens? You go to college?
Yeah. I was fortunate to get a scholarship to play at Youngstown State, and while I was there, I got a chance to play for two great coaches. One was Bill Narduzzi, who really kind of set the tone and laid the foundation of the tradition at YSU with Doozers, Bruisers in the 70s. We had those were times again, right? We think back to when the Mills were really humping in this valley and in the Pittsburgh and all through the Ohio Valley.
Sure.
And Coach Narduzzi's teams of the 70s were a reflection of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of the greatest players, came out of this whole valley, down Route 77 into the Dover, New Philly area, down into, West Virginia.
Yeah.
Brook, West Virginia yielded a bunch of great players, for YSU as well as the local area, So I grew up watching that. I grew up watching those playoff teams. Guys like Jim Ferrani, were heroes. Keith Snoddy, Jim Ferrani, Dwight Dumas, Jeff Johnston is a Columbiana kid here.
Yeah,
was a great player there, and I grew up watching those guys. And if you weren't watching, we had local ties, with the Cheney connection to Pitt. To watch guys like Matt Cavanaugh, the Pelusi brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Olszewski played at Pitt. So we, grew up watching Pitt in our household, and Notre Dame, obviously, with the Notre Dame,
your Catholic
football
boy
show. Yeah,
that's
right.
It.
But other than that, it was YSU and what was going on there, and Doozer laid that foundation, got Youngstown to the national championship game in Division II, and as they would move up, obviously, he opened a new stadium, and then shortly thereafter, and during my tenure, I finished my career playing for Coach Trestle. So again, just great opportunities to be associated with, who were models, for leadership, and I was able to benefit from that several times over throughout the entire course of my career.
So people talk about in football, their life's like sports, right? What did you learn from playing for those coaches that you still apply to this day?
Just the work ethic that it takes,
mm-hmm.
and how much love you have to have, for what you're doing. I think, when I look at, the successful people and the stories that I like to read about, are successful people that lived out a passion in whatever they're doing, right? So if you mention, the Duck Dynasty thing where, he had a passion for duck hunting and duck calls. So, he, ends up coming up with this great idea because of his passion for what he's doing. I don't think it's any different for all of us growing up in sports. You develop that passion, you follow, what is purposeful to you. And then obviously you use the examples you have, good, bad, and indifferent. And football is one of those things, just because in school, you prepare for weekly tests, and you do homework, and you prepare and you study and you take a weekly test, right? Nobody sees that test.
Yeah.
But when you're practicing and you're preparing, and then you're going out to showcase, those things in public, right? Good, bad, or indifferent, somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. There's usually an outcome that comes from that, and what I learned from the great coaches that I was able to experience was the process, not the end result. I don't think there was ever a time where, in Little League Baseball that we ever talked about winning. Now, what we talked about were doing the things that were necessary to earn that win, by the way you played the game, and by the situational baseball that you needed to play, and by the practice habits that you had, and developing those practice habits, which unfortunately are not a part of today's, recreational AAU format,
right.
But I grew up with that. So, became very process oriented. And, I'm one that, believes that you have to believe in the process first. End results are the cumulative effect of a great process. So if you could put a great process together and you could put culture together, you'll just automatically be successful. And then the transfer is in whatever you're going to do in life. There's great stories out there, and all people, all those people pretty much followed that blueprint.
I think it's interesting that you brought that up is nowadays people just expect to win, right? They go into the team or they go into a program, and that's just a coach player, a parent expects them to win. You talk about those processes.
Yeah.
That's something that is built and foundationalized,
Right.
and you build it brick by brick. It's not necessarily you're going to walk into, but that's the culture of the super team, right? We see it in basketball. We're starting to see it in football. We're seeing it in everything, and it funnels right down that track. Are you a fan of seeing these players saying, listen, I'm going to come play with you because we can win right away, or just the idea, a generalization of we can win if the three of us are together?
You know, I was just watching a special on ACC tournament basketball yesterday, and I think that the impression that John Lucas made on me, player back, in the 70s, chose, grew up on Tobacco Road and then chose Maryland and Lefty Drizel to play for, Maryland, because he wanted to go beat David Thompson. He wanted to go beat the great teams at North Carolina.
Sure.
So I think you could look at it both ways. I think the iconic stature, that some of the great players had, kind of like a Magic Johnson. I grew up watching Julius Erving. I was a big Sixer fan when I grew up. They kind of built their teams and won their championships, being that player that led their team to that success. Now obviously there's great role players that fill any of those voids. Jordan had to, create a physicality with his body and had to create a level of mental toughness that came through his training, which is impressive. And without Scottie Pippen, and even more importantly than Scottie, was Horace Grant, that never gets talked about. I mean, obviously you mentioned that trilogy of three players that it takes to get it done in basketball. I mean, we know that. I mean, you could have a great team, with two basketball players. If you have three, I mean, you can go a long way in basketball.
Is it refreshing seeing like the Cavs right now, and they're kind of building the right way foundationally, just through the draft and a couple free agent pickups?
Yeah, I think they're identifiable because they play with passion. They play hard. They're on the ground for loose balls. They're hustling. The game matters to them. I think people gravitate to that. And I think the style of play obviously is a lot more exciting to watch than just an isolation game with somebody dribbling the basketball, out at the half court. I'm more of a fan of the team concept, and I find myself rooting for the underdog. So I'm really, I guess it's catch me on what day, I always loved the Yankees because they wanted to dominate. And they wanted to go out and build those super teams that you're talking about. But then there's something to be said, for the underdog that comes out of nowhere with the success story, like the Joe Burrow story from, down at LSU, and then the attitude that he has, even in today's day and age with social media. Yeah. Which is what I would tell my players all the time. Stay off of social media. At the end of the day, everybody's living their life. They have their set agendas that they need to get accomplished. Really, does anybody really care?
They do and they don't.
Yeah.
They do and they don't. And I tell everybody, and not this is about me, but I always tell people social media either can be used as a tool or can make you look like one. Sure. So you have to be very careful in how you engage people, because everybody's got an opinion now. Yeah, and those opinions are valued by different people. So I was just talking with Frank Rutherford. Rutherford's a police lieutenant down at the YPD, and we were talking about some of the great teams at YSU, that won national championships, and who knows what it would be like if social media was then the way it is now. And the way you're able to manage those teams, for a Jim Trestle. Would you have been active on social media back in the day?
No. I still, to a fault, I'm probably too inactive on social media because I think social media does present opportunities for you. Now that we've experienced COVID, and we're in a digital world now. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you do have to have a brand, and you have to be mindful of that brand. I mean, the social media can be an advantage if used appropriately, like you're saying, with some discipline and some discretion. Yeah. But at the same time, if you go overboard with it, and think that your opinion matters too much, I mean, it could be a detriment to you as well. Oh,
I can't wait. We're going to get Shep on Twitter. Just your daily motivational quote. I would subscribe to that every single day. All right, so let's talk. We talked about you at YSU. You graduate from YSU. What's the first thing you're looking to do, and how you're going to impact the world?
Yeah, I just trying to get in an NFL training camp, which I did. Cleveland Browns, and Green Bay Packers. Still trying to make it. Ended up playing some arena football, and then I took a sales job in between the football
Have
stints
to.
and in between arena. And, but then I ended up working in a bank, and I figured, well, I'll figure it out from here. You know, everybody needs a car loan. You know, everybody wants to get a home loan at some point. Let me learn about it.
Yep.
You know, I ended up coaching Little League baseball and fell in love with, you know, being around the kids, coaching the kids. They filled that void for me, you know, that playing, you know, had left behind, you know. So, you know, I thought that was my vocation, and I thought that if I was going to be gainfully employed and passionate about something, it was going to be in education and coaching.
So Little League baseball got you started on your coaching career.
Little League baseball, yeah. I was coaching with a good friend of mine, you know, Frankie Anakin. We grew up together. He had a you know, local baseball team. And he said, hey, why don't you come and help out? You know, so you know, I started running with the kids, getting them in shape before practice, and you know, we shared the coaching responsibility. But I thought, you know, all things considered, you know, this would be a great way to do things. I didn't see myself, you know, in a country club, which would have been one of the benefits of staying, you know, becoming a VP at a bank or something like that. Just didn't, you know, that's not my typical MO, you know. So I thought education and coaching was for me. And then I thought I would, you know, in retrospect, looking at the way I grew up and knowing, you know, what some of my strengths were as well as my weaknesses, you know, I thought when you can have a lot of impact on people when you understand how much they value what's important to them, which really makes us who we are. So, you know, when you're going through school, there's no doubt that academics, you know, are first and foremost, you know, academics and the opportunities that you create from them. But until you realize those things, you know, the influences that come from those intimate relationships that take place, you know, at the practices, in the locker rooms of all the sports and all the activities. You know, I wouldn't exclude, you know, band, dance teams, choir, you know, whatever the case, you know, getting ready for a theater experience. You know, it's all part of the same thing. There's a passion there. There's a passion that brings, you know, all of those young people to those opportunities, right? And you use that, you know, to influence them and make them a better, well-rounded individual, kind of raise them through their love of sport. And that's kind of been my mission statement the whole way through. You know, take a young student athlete's love of sport and use that to raise them, you know, with the right values and attitudes. It's going to lead to their future success while they're in school. You know, so sometimes you have immediate success. Sometimes you're a seed planter. You know, whatever the case may be, you have an opportunity, you know, to make a difference in other people's lives. Now, you don't know how that's going to turn out until they end up adults themselves, you know, and now they're coaching Little League baseball or working, you know, with the local youth organizations, or, you know, they're raising their kids.
Does anybody else raise their eyebrow whenever you say that your elite coaching career started with Little League baseball? Does anybody else go, whoa, what?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of people in the area that have had the same experiences and developed the same passions. And maybe some of the folks that are older than us, you know, had more opportunities. You know, when I look back and when I get a chance to talk to people who just love, you know, sandlot sports. And I think, you know, anybody that has had success, I wouldn't consider myself, you know, even anywhere in that top 10 of people that have come out of the area. But I bet you if you talk to all of them, they'll talk about their influences in sandlot sports and baseball in particular, because it was the national pastime and still is in many cases, you know, even though there's other sports opportunities now.
Everybody played baseball.
Yeah.
Everybody played baseball.
Yeah.
At least for a moment in time, everybody played baseball.
Yeah.
So from your standpoint, all right, you're a Little League baseball coach.
Right.
You get a good taste of the coaching philosophy. You're impacting kids immediately.
Yeah.
When did you realize that this was going to be in your blood? This was going to be
right when I was coaching Little League baseball. I just made a shift, and you know, I got into, you know, I've always been a goal setter. You know, I had goals. You know, I had goals for my, you know, what my high school career would look like as soon as probably the 5th grade. You know, those goals that I set in the 5th grade, and I think a lot of kids are out there like that. I mean, don't discount how impressionable you know, young people are by the time they're 12 years old. You know, but because the influences are strong and they're there and they're impactful. You know, for me, you know, some of the decisions that I made, you know, you don't have to have a lot of goals going through school. You could have few, but they're part of that short-term goal structuring that says at least this is what I'm going to attempt to do as I continue to climb the ladder, and started with that, set some goals then. I had a couple, just a couple goals coming out of high school, and you make adjustments, but while I was working at the bank and coaching Little League baseball, I set about 12 to 14 goals that might have been different than most, but they were the right thing for me, and just followed those, and have been following them since.
All right. So where's your first high school coaching gig?
First high school coaching gig is with Fred Thomas out at Alliance High School.
Okay.
Yeah. Gary Barber and I went over there with Fred. Both of us graduated with our degrees in 4 years on time while playing all 4 years.
Wow.
But we didn't leave with teaching certificates.
Right.
So we went back. We had to get a teaching certificate and make that sacrifice. Gary did. I did, and we got our first opportunity with Fred, and we coached varsity football with Fred, and then we coached freshman basketball. The Federal League back then, and I think still today, they have a philosophy where they have multiple freshman basketball teams. So Gary and I split the gym. We split the players up based off of chemistry, and we had a lot of fun doing that to start. So,
all right. So let's go through the resume. You ready?
Yeah.
Alliance, 2.
Poland.
2.
Poland is the head coach there. An assistant at first, and head girls basketball coach, believe it or not.
So are you always coaching multiple sports? Is that how it works or no?
That's how it usually works for most. Look at Chuck Kyle. He's gonna retire from St. Ignatius, and he's been the head football and head track coach there forever.
It feels like we're getting away from that, because it used to be like that. If you had one coach in one thing, they could almost recruit you to play another sport if you like that coach.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing coaches do isolation, kind of like the trend that we're seeing with kids.
Right.
They're specializing in these sports.
Right.
Okay, so you get to Poland.
Yep.
Then you go to
Seneca Valley.
Okay.
Yep.
Then you move to
Massillon.
Then you move to
Waynesburg University.
All right. So was that the last high school gig?
Massillon.
Yeah.
Massillon was the last high school gig. Yeah.
And then you made the jump to college. Now, what I've always wanted to ask you, never had the chance to. We talk about all the time the student athlete jumping from high school to college.
Yeah.
What was it like for you jumping from high school coaching to college coaching? Now, Massillon by itself is almost like a small college.
Yeah.
And maybe even bigger than some of the small colleges around us, like Westminster and Teal and those schools. What was it like for you? What was that transition like?
Well, first of all, I love I love growing up in the era that I have, because, I'm as much a part of the old school traditions as well as the new school. So, the observations that I can make is a reflection of that. Whereas I don't think, younger people from the new school, have that to reflect upon. So some of the old school values, the old school traditions, the way you treated people, the relationship driven philosophy that the old coaches had, because they had passion for sport. It wasn't driven by how much money you could make in the profession. That's still very much alive and well, in the philosophy that I bring to sports advising, coaching, administration. It doesn't matter. It comes from that. I think the biggest thing when you're making a transition to anything, you have to understand what it takes, and as I've always said, I've always been observant and aware of what's taken place. I think before you go take a job, you should understand what it's going to entail. So, I knew that when I made a decision to go small college, that would be driven based off of family, less moves, a little bit more stability, but the recruiting was going to be, what drives the engine in college, which is different from high school, right?
Sure.
Everybody in high school, and even the Massillons of the world, you got your 30-day no contact period that you have to strategically plan for what you're going to, what changes you're going to make in your program. What clinics are you going to go out and look for these, to make these changes? What advice are you going to seek? And then, you basically start chipping away at those decisions that you make and how you're going to build your team for the next year. I think there's a lot of latitude in that when you get a chance to be a head coach early, because you can make those changes as a head coach, offensively, defensively. You could try different things, and because we live in such a great region, I mean, there's great coaches to go out and get that advice from, to plan and watch spring practice and observe some of those things in every sport that we participate in. But, with that understanding, taking that thing, and being a guy that tried to fit, the scheme to the players that we had, not vice versa, was an example of that. And I think necessity becomes the mother of invention.
Mm-hmm.
You have the opportunity to learn more and make more changes as a head coach. I think that helped me when I moved to the college level, because in Division III, you just don't know what you're going to get, right? It's like that Forrest Gump saying, right? Life's like a box of chocolates, and you're at the bottom of the totem pole. And I think you're gonna, there's going to be times where you pull that recruit that belongs at a higher level. There's great players, in all these sports at all divisions, but more than likely you're going to have to adapt if you want to be successful with the players you have. So it just creates, in my opinion, it creates a learning curve that goes beyond just having a philosophy and what you want to do and just knowing, hey, this is what I like. This is what I want to do. I'm going to go out and I'm at a Division I school. I'm going to go out and find the players that fit that.
Yeah.
What's better, that or being the person that identifies, has a vision for what they see in a player, right? They recruit that player for what they see that the player could be, not what they are now, but what they could be. And then you go out and find the resources and you kind of create that individualized plan for them.
Yeah.
And then you bring them through their career, with a vision for what they can be. Now you coach that culture into them, and now you got something. I think you got something pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Not based off of where they're at.
Oh, no.
Where they're going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big difference. So other than the obvious adjustments, right? The 15-minute clock is different than a high school clock. Game management is much different. How you're going to play that game. So it does take, an adjustment. You're coaching an older kid in college.
So that leads into my next question. So when you're talking about it, you're talking about a boy versus a man, right? A lot of times, you're talking about different influences, different motives that are driving. College players are trying to get to that next level.
Right.
High school players, they're trying to get to college, but it might just be still because mom and dad are making them play.
Right.
From as a leader, as a coach, that you had to make that change, and it's more than a 15-minute clock. I mean, that's the stuff you can prepare them for every day in practice. Sure. But to prepare them for life and the transition, you had to have a lot of adjustments, how you treat players. Mm-hmm. Did you ever change your style of what you're doing? I mean, you're a low-key guy, and you can get fired up, I know. Right. But did you ever change your influence or the way you influence from high school to college?
Yeah, I think you have to. And I think when we talked about social media and texting and the way people use their cell phones nowadays and the whole immediate gratification or the immediate, I had to study, I'm passionate about what I do. I think it's important, that may be long-winded for a long time, so, you have to shorten that up. In today's standards, you want to reach an attention span. You got to be careful how you use that. Your audience will tell you that, though. If you're a classroom teacher, your audience will tell you that. Great teachers are obviously prepared, and then they obviously, attempt to reach their classroom audience, whatever that is, right? But you have to pay attention. And I would say social media was the biggest impact on that. Wow. And then there has to be more to it than just what you want to be as an athlete also. And that's when I go back to the mission of, raising young people, through their love of sport, which enables you to have those intimate conversations, what gets you into the minutia of what they're about, and you build who they are through what they're about, and it comes from, teachers learn it in the classrooms as they're preparing to be young teachers through psych of ed. But there's a way that you develop cognitively, right, with what you're going to learn. Absolutely. But there's also a way that you develop emotionally, right? And those two, go hand in hand. So that's why the sports that we have and the opportunities we have to teach, through adversity in many cases, and through that understanding, is what can make you, so much better of an individual. If you have the right guidance and somebody who wants to recognize those opportunities. So I'd go culture, the type of culture that you build, when you're handling all facets a young person's development, right? We were fortunate at Waynesburg to have a full athletic training program, which allowed us to get into the science of how we were training our kids. The way I trained as a competitive athlete, growing up in the 70s and 80s is not the way we train athletes nowadays. But again, necessity becomes the mother of invention. If you want to put your team out in front, if you want to make the necessary changes, you have to be bold enough to seek out, the right information and then implement that information. And there's layers of that onion. So coming from that environment where, you do more with less. It doesn't matter really where you coach to me. I mean, if you're a great coach and you're in Division 7 in the football structure in Ohio, or you're in Division 4 in one of the Olympic sport, playoff systems, it doesn't matter. If you're a good coach and you provide great culture, and you're an outstanding teacher with transparency that gets a message across to their athletes, then you could be successful anywhere. I don't think where you coach should define what type of coach you are.
I like that.
At all.
I like that.
Because I mean, some of the greatest coaches that we've had in all sports, were small school coaches, either at the high school level or the small college level, where they had to use extra resources. It's just a little tougher, to write, when you're in sports information, I mean, you want that mega splash when you're writing that description of who you're hiring as that coach, you know what I mean? But you leave the substance behind in those cases. And I think it's happening a lot nowadays.
Because that name carries the rest of the paragraph, right? And in a lot of cases, if you're an SID, that name, you don't have to do as much work if you just hire that name. But if you do the research and you're proud of who you're hiring, like from your standpoint, look at what they've done. It might be not a well-known name, right? But look what the body of work is. Couldn't agree more.
You have to look at what they're producing. If you're looking at somebody in strength and conditioning, you look at what their players look like, how well conditioned they are. I was just out at a basketball game in Western Pennsylvania the other night. The difference, I mean, it was a poorly played basketball game. Right. I mean, the fundamentals of the game were out the door. Both teams were playing hard, but there was a subtle difference in the way the game was played. Neshannock was playing mindlessly hard. Ball wasn't going in the hole, but they were diving for balls, trying to make it happen. Brownsville, athletically, better physically on the court, but just didn't know it. If I was going to pick two teams that I would have chose to coach, I loved the way Neshannock played. There's no doubt about it. But I thought there was potential in what Brownsville could be. And I think that sometimes is the difference.
You're a sunny side up guy. I mean, naturally, you're a glass half full. And I think that's what we're going to get into that after the break. But we got to get you a cup of coffee first. We're going to take a break, catch up on some bills. Back after this with more with Rick Shepas right after the break.
When looking for home design inspiration, don't just be inspired, be Baird inspired. Whether new or remodeling, Baird Brothers has the latest trends like shiplap to refresh your home. Go from inspiration to installation with our wide selection of in-stock American hardwoods. From the rustic charm of antique oak to the warmth of traditional cherry, Baird Brothers has what you need to make your home inspiring. Baird Brothers, our family's heritage, your family's home.
For a great vehicle and a great experience, come to Boardman Mitsubishi today. As always, our full lineup of Mitsubishi models comes with a standard 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. Boardman Mitsubishi, your hometown Mitsubishi dealer since 1999.
Coca's Pizza, always supporting our community and our local athletes. Stop in on game day or score big and have it delivered right to your door. Check out our daily specials at cocaspizza.com. That's Coca's Pizza, we serve it hot.
At Hubbard Chevrolet, Hubbard can help you get the financing you need regardless of your situation. I'm Tony Page, and I've helped thousands of customers in Northeast Ohio and Western Pennsylvania buy a vehicle. Visit HubbardChevy.com to get pre-approved. Remember, folks, Hubbard can help.
You're not waiting to see what the world has in store for you. It's more about what you have in store for the world. All you need is the opportunity. All you need are the resources of a large university and the advantages of a personalized academic setting where you can experience new worlds in the arts and sciences, business, and education and make them your own. We are where you shape your future. We are Youngstown State University and proud.
It means the world to me to know that what we're doing is impacting people. And whether it's simply, I got to watch my son or daughter when I was out of town, or we just love watching YSN. We love what you do for our son or daughter. So whenever someone says thank you or someone is appreciative of what we're doing, it tells me everyone at YSN is doing what we initially set out to do, which is shine a light on these athletes and help them kind of promote themselves. My name's Anthony Hartwig, and my sports network is your sports network.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are back with a very engaging interview with Rick Shepas. He's done so much. We've only made it about halfway through his resume, so we're going to tie that end up, and then we're going to move on to what he's yet to check the box on, which I can't believe there's things out there, Shep, that even exists, because you've done so much in your career, in your 56 years on this ride. But you never settle, and I love that about you. So, all right, you're at you went from Massillon to college ranks, right? Waynesburg to where?
Went to the Youngstown City.
Okay.
Which was an unusual thing. I was at Waynesburg for a good long time. The goal was to be there for 15 years, right? I had 3 daughters, all 4 years apart. One of the benefits by being the Massillon coach is it creates opportunity for you,
Sure.
Possible opportunities, right? If you make the adjustments to hang in there. And, I was lucky to have, a solid tenure there and several contract renewals there, which I'll always be proud of, because that's a tough environment to coach in.
Oh, yeah.
You have to adapt and you have to utilize all your resources. But, Massillon gave me the opportunity to end up at Waynesburg University, a little off the beaten path, but still another opportunity, for me. And primarily, family driven, make fewer moves. And, that was my plan, at least in my mind, to create opportunities for my kids to get through school, so good, bad, and indifferent. It creates, it creates dynamics that are all positive, teachable circumstances to learn from, but was able to do that. And, I just thought, exhausting, for all the Division III coaches out there, that work, 365, I want to say there's 168 hours in a week. So if you're out there and you're saying 24/7, what does 24/7 mean? Well, keep breaking it down. It's 168 hours a week, right? In Division III, though, there's no dead periods in recruiting. There's no breaks after signing day, to take some time off, regroup,
There's no scholarship.
Get your spring ball plan together. It's 365 days a year, and it just continues to roll. So I want to say that in a challenge of a declining population, right?
Yeah.
I would definitely say that in our region, if you put a compass just south of Newcastle, like right on the 376 exchange, right? Yeah. And you did and you created like a 75-mile radius around that. I mean, we're heavily saturated with the number of colleges, both Division I, Division II, small colleges. The NAIA pretty much kind of dissolved a little bit on us in this area, east of the Mississippi. But due to declining population, and then due to numbers of athletes participating in football, with all the all the issues that football had been facing, right? It just became tougher and tougher to recruit, and I was at a point where I needed a change physically. I was exhausted. I thought that never saw myself getting burned out, but I was physically exhausted from the recruiting, mainly. Recruiting and the opportunities. You gotta be, smart. And I thought we had found a niche, for a good, 6 or so years, we found a great niche. We were recruiting the right players. We were recruiting smart players. We were able to package them well. They were able to have a great experience. And the other thing was, we had 31 of our best faculty, heading off into an incentive retirement.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, these are, when I'm going into your household to recruit your kid, in concept, I'm creating the relationship, I'm developing the communication and the relationship, with the athlete. However, right, it's the sum of what we are together that's going to create the college graduate.
Sure.
Right. So finding them the right major, making the adjustments along the way, providing the academic support, keeping them healthy and safe, providing those internship opportunities that are going to lead to those job recommendations that are going to make them, professionals, right? In the concept that the NCAA, I'm going to be a professional in something,
Yep.
When I graduate. Right. So, really there were some factors in there that said, hey, time to go. I got a hip replacement at the time.
Sure.
I kind of put a little emphasis on getting healthy that spring. And I just made a decision to leave. I didn't really chase a lot of opportunities. I had a couple short conversations, with a couple coaches at levels higher than what I was working. And then I was presented with this opportunity, to come back and do a consulting experience for the Youngstown City Schools, So while I was finishing up at Waynesburg, I did that. I came up with, I went into all the schools, evaluated all the buildings, evaluated all the athletic facilities, talked to, at the time, Chris Mohib, former CEO, about how, he was going to make structural configurations to the district and what plans he had. And he wanted to know if a sports plan would fit, So then my strategic plan was going back to my mission statement, which I believe in greatly, right? How do we use an individual's, love for sport and extracurricular activity, to drive that engine as they're maturing, to create that culture where we instill those values that we want those kids to graduate, create that culture, create an identity for them while they're figuring it out. And just like you mentioned, right, coaching a high school athlete and getting into the minutia of how things are going for them at home, not necessarily just throughout the course of the school day, but what's taking place at home and what's affecting the course of that school day, or what's affecting that practice in the extracurricular area, and then that transition of what is a 17 or 18-year-old like? We should all go back and think about some of those things, right? And how we were then and how we knew a lot more about life than we did later, right? I always use the statement with my, players that I coach, I knew everything when I was 17 or 18 years old, and then knew nothing when I was married, having my first child.
That's it.
Knew absolutely nothing. And that's where life kind of began in a little bit more of an understanding, So, you take a student athlete that's in that area, right? I think a 17, 18-year-old graduate is operating on a totally different emotional plane than a 20 to 21-year-old college student.
Absolutely.
I think there's a world of difference.
Especially with guys, there's a maturity that doesn't come along. We've always been told growing up that, females are maturing faster than guys. And
sure.
As a competitive male, you're like, there's no way. There's no way I'm mature.
Yeah.
And then you realize how immature you are. And then when you do mature, you go, I was an idiot.
Wow.
I knew nothing, to your point. So, all right, Youngstown City Schools, you're there.
Yep.
You're there for how long?
There for 3 years, three great years of perspective and understanding and belief, that great things could happen there. We brought back the Golden Bear at East High School first.
Yep.
We got into that championship level with a conference championship at East, the last AAC conference championship there, and a playoff berth, which I think was outstanding. State track, champion, indoor track, into a great finish into the outdoor track season. Started rugby just because I thought our kids were physical and I thought they needed another
outlet
resource to be active in the spring along with track and baseball. Rugby state championship there, and then strategically opening up Cheney High School
Yeah.
back to the sports program that was gone for about a decade, with the right individual. Chris Emile was the right individual. Casey Bogart was the right building AD for that situation. And Cheney, had the great traditions,
Yep.
although it wouldn't be the same Cheney that people
Right.
would be able to reflect upon. It would be a new Cheney, but still one with great opportunity. And I think it made for a great experience all the way around. Got a chance to work with some great guys that I believed in. And it's a model where I knew the kids were there,
Yeah.
right? In doing the consult and out into the buildings every day and watching the great job that the Youngstown City School teachers don't really get a lot of credit for, and how much they truly passionately care for those kids. I thought, well, that's one thing that I was able to reflect upon immediately, right? It's like a sore thumb. Great teachers, who are very committed to those kids just stand out to me. And then the look in the kids' eyes, for what future opportunities may hold for them. I thought there was plenty of talent, girls and boys,
Yeah.
they were just lacking opportunities.
Yep.
Some of them were even in curriculum. They lacked similar curriculum opportunities that a student might have at a Boardman, Canfield, or Austintown, Struthers, Poland, right? They had less academic opportunities. So, this was an all-encompassing, holistic approach to how we could use sport,
Yeah.
right? To change grade point averages,
Yep.
right? And test scores in a failing school district.
And
that was our model. Yeah.
It seeing some. You see some of these guys, Clive going to Boston College now.
Yeah.
You got,
Yeah.
since D1, I think per capita in that school district, the Youngstown City Schools, they have the most D1 athletes
Right.
out of anybody around here, which is
Right.
amazing. And a kudos to you and everybody involved in that. For bringing that back to our valley, because it's so important. It's so important to get these kids covered.
Yeah.
Especially for us. I mean, they're both on the wall. We feel an extreme way about Cheney and East, and naturally, that's how you and I kind of cross paths.
Yeah.
Getting involved. All right, so you're on Youngstown City Schools. Now, where is it? Is there one more, or
Yeah,
is that where you are?
Yeah, I mean, COVID kind of put a bump in my road, being a central office person in athletics, and I set the tone. Nick Safera is now in the role that I have.
Love Nick.
Continuing thing is, Nick does a great job, and Nick is very passionate about kids, and we were able to build a great foundation for some things. I'm hopeful that Justin Jennings, new superintendent here, taking over from his CEO role as the future superintendent, will make the initiatives and the incentives to continue to grow the program. Although setbacks from COVID, right, was able to work into a workforce space and learn a little bit more career tech credentials here over the last year. But I'm going to kind of stay in a consulting role for me. I think there's a number of things, and I consider myself of great value just because of the experiences and the perspectives that I have. It's just a matter of finding that niche. I still get that coaching fix, and I'm able to do that and training some quarterbacks and receivers, away from some middle school kids. Obviously try to get them when they're younger. Instill the right values and beliefs and the right practice structure for them, to develop and make adjustments for themselves as they continue on through their high school careers. But, I'm enjoying it right now. So there's a lot of opportunities for that.
One of those opportunities is one right here at YSN with our newest baby, our newest project, which we looked to launch, about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Timing was not right because of COVID, because camps and things that were happening, but
Right.
we're looking to relaunch that baby here in the next couple months, and you're a big part of that. You're a big believer in YSN Prospect. Can you just give a high-level explanation of why you like it, and what do you think is going to come from a YSN Prospect?
Well, I'm just a big believer, DJ, in what you guys are doing for sports in the local area and the 50-plus schools that you represent, and the support you're able to provide these young athletes, including scholarships that you guys have been able to provide. Tremendous advantage, to the local schools that you have made this platform available to them, where they could even see their kids play with all the COVID restrictions that took place. I think that's where you came into the forefront, and why your mission statement is something that I believe in. But from that film that film library that you guys have created And because exposure is so important due to the extra years that kids are now receiving in the recruiting process, I think it's created a little bit of a backlog for young student athletes. And I think it's created a lot of frustrations in the recruiting process. I think young parents who are having their oldest kids go through that process for the first time, they have a lot of questions. Sports are so individualized now, that there's it's not a one size fits all recruiting process, right? There's different signing periods for all the sports. There's different ways that these college coaches are recruiting kids. So for example, if we use golf, for example, Brian Tollner's done a great job over at the Mill Creek golf course to bring, 2-day tournaments and championship play to this area. Well, these college golf coaches are looking for kids that are playing in 2-day events as opposed to single-day events. That's just one little nugget, of what I'm talking about. So if you have a young aspiring golfer, male or female, that's looking to, look at an upward path and trajectory and play golf in college, right? You have an expert like Brian Tollner, in the mechanism at YSN Prospect to provide that advice if it is needed, if it's called upon, right? You have people like myself in football. You have the Don Mancinis of the world, in wrestling, Scotty Knox in baseball, and so on and so forth. And then again, right, it takes a village, because of the individual nuances of the sport recruiting, right? Parents just have questions, which create, I think, a great niche for YSN Prospect to get out into the schools, and explain the recruiting platform, go over the eligibility rules at both the high school and college level. So, so parents have a greater understanding, of how to maintain a strong eligibility and what colleges are looking for. A lot of colleges relax some of the grade point average and test score requirements. A lot of schools in college are test score optional now. Yeah. Which are all things for young parents to know, and not just at the high school level, when their kids get to be juniors in high school preparing for their senior year. Really, this is a conversation that needs to take place at the middle school level, and start to have those conversations about how to prepare. You get a clean slate academically with a 4.0 GPA the moment you enter high school, that first day that you're in high school as a young freshman. Yeah. So the state's trying to figure out, how they're going to graduate kids. They're going to start moving away from some of the standardized tests. They're going to start looking at curriculum as a pathway, as a graduation seal, but they're also going to look at industry recognized credentials and a 12-point pathway to a graduation seal, possible, apprenticeship, pre-apprentice, and apprenticeship taken over for internship. So this is all creating some, interesting things for 22 high school freshmen that are going to be coming into their high school years here. Financial literacy piece, it's now mandatory. So it's almost like we're coming full circle, like a clothing style. Yeah. And again, right, who better to understand some of those things than really individuals, who are either, on their way to retiring teachers and coaches, or or in that space that have a reflection back to the old home ec and the old, structures of, woodshop class and things like that coming back into play here. So it's kind of neat. It's kind of neat to see it come back around.
All right. So I got to end with a kind of off the cuff question. Since you talked about it coming full circle with clothing styles, what's one clothing style you would never want to see come back?
Probably bell-bottom pants with the elevator shoes of the 70s, right?
You didn't like those?
From the disco era.
Did you have a pair?
You know what? Unfortunately, when I was graduating, that 7th and 8th grade level, where you go through that next step. Yeah, unfortunately, I did have to go through that. Of course, my parents were a little bit older, so, I was a little bit embarrassed by, what the kind of clothes, my parents put on me. I was part of the, the old Sears and Roebuck, the tough skin, all I wanted was a pair of blue jeans when I was in high school. But, my mom worked at Sears, so I had every color but blue jeans, which obviously left a little bit of a stigma on me, but I'm overcoming it. I'm in beta right now, going through a growth process over it.
Doing a great job. Fashionably, thumbs up for you. All right. We have so much left to uncover, but unfortunately we can't do it today. I can't wait to bring you in the next time. We're talking about maybe a podcast down the road, because I think that'd be beneficial.
Yeah, I don't see why not. We've got within this YSN Prospect format, we've got some experts in every aspect that are really passionate about what they do. They can provide knowledge. to young parents who are trying to guide their kids through. You know, DJ, you mentioned the whole specialization thing.
Yep.
You know, I mean, young parents need to understand right now that the people that are excelling the most at the upper levels are the multiple sport athletes that came through high school, taking advantage of every opportunity that they had. So hopefully we can have an influence on that and impact it in a positive way.
I love it. Rick Shepas, a legend amongst all of us. Thank you for the time. I mean, this was awesome.
I appreciate it. You give me way too much credit.
You're the man. All right, that's going to do it for the Power Hour for this Thursday. If you want to hear more from Rick Shepas, how do they get a hold of you?
Just call my cell, 724-802-5909.
It's out there, baby. He's fishing. Yeah. He's fishing. We're going to get him on Twitter. That's my goal for the next 6 months. That's my 6-month goal. Get you on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't see that really happening. But you know, I don't think people really want to hear that much about, you know, what my thoughts are, what my daily thoughts are. You know,
maybe I'll just get a daily text from you that motivates me. That's going to do it. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate you. And we'll see you tomorrow, 3 to 4, right here on YSN.
Yeah, thank you.